If you knew there was one change you could make in your diet that could greatly reduce your chances of getting Alzheimer's disease, wouldn't you want to know what it is? Stay with me because that's coming up next on Thin, Strong, Healthy. I'm Cheryl Major, and I want to welcome you to Thin, Strong, Healthy. Today on Thin, Strong, Healthy, we're going to talk about gluten. What is it? Why shouldn't you eat it? Or why should you cut back on eating it? And what can you eat instead? I'll take you to my kitchen a little later on, and I'm going to show you how to make a really simple, easy, gluten-free flatbread that's really versatile. I think you're going to love it. First of all, let's start by just talking a little bit about a little teaser at the beginning of this, talking about dementia and Alzheimer's and something you can change in your diet that can reduce your risk of getting Alzheimer's. They have shown in studies that people who have Alzheimer's, when they look at the plaque in their brains, there's this plaque called amyloid plaque that appears in the brain of people with Alzheimer's. And there have been links between eating gluten and amyloid plaque in the brain. So the link therefore becomes eating gluten can increase your chance of getting Alzheimer's disease. So we hear a lot about gluten these days. And what is gluten? Well, gluten is very simply a type of protein that's found in wheat. Some people can't process that protein. Some people have trouble processing that protein, and it happens to different degrees. But because there's been shown to be a link between gluten and Alzheimer's, we want to concentrate today on helping you understand how you can eliminate or reduce your gluten intake and not suffer. You know, nobody wants to suffer with their diet. So the wheat of today is not the wheat that your grandparents ate. You don't remember hearing about all this Alzheimer's dementia stuff years and years ago. I mean, it existed, but not to the degree, the epidemic degree that we see it today. And because it's related to gluten, and gluten is found in wheat, and wheat is in everything, we have to look at the kind of wheat that we have now. It's been hybridized to grow very quickly. It used to grow very tall, now it grows shorter, and it has also been hybridized to be higher in gluten content. Now, people with celiac disease are the people who have a highly allergic reaction to eating gluten. They cannot eat gluten. It is very damaging. It gives them terrible symptoms of IBS or irritable bowel syndrome, gives them body pain. It can cause certain types of intestinal cancers. It's very, very serious. And if you are diagnosed with celiac disease, you must get gluten out of your diet. You must become gluten-free. Now, others are sensitive or intolerant to gluten. I believe I was one of them. I've freely shared on this program that I suffered from chronic depression for decades of my adult life. I don't anymore because I've significantly changed my diet. And part of that includes getting gluten out of my diet. Do I ever have it? Yes, I'll admit sometimes I do have gluten. For the most part, I am gluten-free. Now, people who have sensitivity or who are gluten intolerant have symptoms like stomach issues. Again, it may contribute to depression. You can experience brain fog, inability to concentrate. You may have chronic fatigue syndrome. It can contribute to joint pain, skin rashes. You can have weight loss. I recently talked with one of my coaching clients who has a granddaughter in Europe, and she was very, very sick, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. She was losing weight, and they finally discovered that she has celiac disease. So they've eliminated gluten from her diet, and she's doing much, much better. So There's really no downside to giving up gluten. The only thing that you might have to do is you might have to supplement some B vitamins. But for the most part, it's only good to reduce or eliminate gluten from your diet. Gluten-free, now we see that as a buzzword everywhere. In the stores, they have entire gluten-free sections now. But remember, when it's a marketing ploy, a marketing buzzword, it's going to appear on the front of the package, and remember, that's for marketing purposes. That is not where the truth is told. So you have to turn the package over, and you get your label reading chops out, and you have to look at the ingredients to see what's really in there. Because oftentimes when they take out gluten, much as when they take out healthy fat, they replace it, because it has flavor and it has texture, they replace it with things that you don't want to amp up, such as sugar and salt. So you have to turn that label over, and you have to turn that package over. You have to read that label to find out what's really in that food that you're considering buying and eating, feeding your family. Now, recall that highly processed foods in general are not good for you. So if you have to get something that's processed, that's in a box, make sure you read the label, make sure you check it out. But whole or nearly whole foods are always, always your best option. If you give up gluten, you must stop it for long enough to see if it makes a difference. It's not good enough to get off it for a week and hope that, your world is going to change and you can feel much better. You may start to feel better, but you need to get off it for a significant amount of time. Several weeks to a month at the very least. Some gurus that you'll talk to will say you really need to be off it for 6 months to a year to realize the true benefits of being gluten-free. Now, I want to take you to my kitchen because several years ago I started making a gluten-free flatbread. And the recipe was quite simple. My niece Kate in California sent it to me and only had a few ingredients. And over the years, I've added to it and I've played with it a little bit. So I want to take you to my kitchen and I want to show you how to make it. I want to show you how to use it, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it when we come back. So here we go. Enjoy. Welcome to my kitchen. I even cleaned my stove for you because I knew you were going to stop by. Today I'm going to show you how to make a quick, easy, delicious gluten-free flatbread. So let's get started. I'm going to show you how to put this soka together. It takes less than 10 minutes. And I'm kind of a little of this and a little of that cook at this point. So I'm just going to put the spices in, but I want to assure you that I have the recipe on my website, thinstronghealthy.com. If you go there, you'll find the recipe with all the measurements there, and it's up in the recipe section, which you can find in the menu bar. So first thing we're going to do to get started is a rounded ½ cup of quinoa flour. That goes in. A rounded ½ cup of garbanzo bean flour. All these are gluten-free. That goes in. I've got my whisk and my favorite color green. I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of hemp hearts. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of golden flax meal. All of these are very, very good for you. And I've found that the golden flax meal really gives the soka more of a bread-like texture, which when you're doing gluten-free is a little tough to achieve. It can get a little crumbly and stiff. So then I put some pink Himalayan sea salt in. And again, the amounts are all written out for you in the recipe. Some organic dill, I love dill. Little organic white pepper. I love garlic powder. I put that in plentiful amount. And you can do this to taste. You'll get so that you'll know how to dump it in or how to hold back. These are dried onion flakes. Those go in. And then I have some seeds. I have sesame seeds. And I have chia seeds. And did you know that if you have issues with high blood pressure, chia seeds are very good for you. It helps you control your high blood pressure. Mix all that up. And we're going to put in a 1.25 cups of water. Mix that up. And then I'm going to add a tablespoon of olive oil, and be sure to buy your olive oil in glass containers. Keeps it fresher longer, and you want to look for a nice green color in your olive oil. And mix all that in. And that's all you have to do. Now, I like to add a tablespoon of Kalamata olive paste. That's optional. I also like to put on top some chopped either the green olives or the Kalamata olives. But you can start with the basics, and then you can put, sometimes I put in sun-dried tomatoes too, so you can kind of make it your own as you go. So that's the basic recipe, and I don't think that took us 10 minutes. I don't think it even took us 5. So now we're going to head over to the stove, and we're going to put it in the pan and get it in the oven. We're over at the stove, and I want to show you how to prepare your pan. And we're going to get this soka in the oven so it can bake. The house will smell incredible, and we'll have a nice fresh soka to eat. So I use a cast iron skillet. I use a 10-inch cast iron skillet. This one's really seasoned because I use it all the time. I heat it up a little bit, and then I'm just going to put a little olive oil in there. Come on, there we go. A little olive oil in there, and we're just going to brush it around so that the soka doesn't stick. Now, I've used this pan for so long and so often that it's kind of crowned in the center. So I have to be really careful to brush the center, otherwise it'll stick in the center. And that has happened to me. It's not the end of the world, but we learn how to work around these things. So we've got our nicely brushed pan, and we're going to put the soka mixture in. Now, I actually decided to chop up some Kalamata olives and put in the pan, and that took me a little bit of time, so this has really gotten quite thick. It's usually not quite that thick, but it's going to be just fine. We're just going to move that from the bowl into the pan, and then we're going to spread it around and flatten it out. And again, this is a little stiffer than it usually is just because I took a little extra time. I kind of changed my mind and decided to put some olives in the mixture. And again, a lot of the time I'll use an olive paste, and I just take a tablespoon and put that in. That's really easy. It's a lot faster than chopping up the olives. And if you're in a time crunch or just feeling a little bit lazy, it's an easy way to get the olive flavor. I like the way the chopped olives look in there too, though. Okay, so that's all set. We're going to put a little more salt on the top, a little more pink Himalayan salt, my favorite and very healthy for you. And then, so it looks nice and we've got an extra olivey flavor. I've chopped up some Kalamata olives and we're going to sprinkle those on top. Makes it look nice. You can use all of them or you don't have to use all of them. I've got a few too many here, so I'm going to stop there. And one thing I've learned to do is to press the olives into the batter a little bit, otherwise they just get really crispy. And when you cut the soka and eat it, they just fall off, which kind of defeats the purpose of having them there. Okay, so we've got that pressed into the batter, and we're going to put this delicious batter into a preheated oven, 350 degrees. We're going to bake it for an hour and 25 minutes, and then what I do is I take it out. I don't take it out. I leave it in for an extra 10 minutes. I turn off the oven for that 10 minutes, and then I take it out. I take it out of the pan and I put it onto a baking rack to cool. So I'll see you in an hour and a half. Soka, as you recall, is a gluten-free flatbread. We've mixed it, we've put it in the oven, and now we're almost ready to enjoy it. We've been baking it for an hour and 25 minutes in a cast iron skillet at 350 degrees. When the timer went off, I turned the oven off and I left it in for an additional 10 minutes to get it nice and crisp. And it's going to be ready in just a minute. We're going to take it out of the oven. Oh, there it is right now. Let's see what we've got. And you're going to be careful taking it out because it's heavy and it's hot. Oh, that looks fabulous. Okay, so that looks really good. We have a nice brown soka. We've got a lot of spices in there. We've got Kalamata olives in the batter and also on top. So we're going to loosen it and we're going to put it on the baking rack. And sometimes they come out really easily and sometimes you have to loosen them. This one's gonna pop right out. Oh, nice of it to cooperate. I'm gonna put it on my favorite baking rack, which actually happened to belong to my grandmother. So it's probably close to 100 years old. I think that's kind of cool. So we're gonna let this cool a little bit and then we're gonna cut it into pie wedges and we're gonna eat it plain. If you want, it tastes great because we've got all those flavors in there. Or you can also do one of my favorite treatments and just put some nut butter on. I happen to love almond butter on it or some guacamole. And sometimes I will chop up a little bit of it and put it under a fried egg in the morning for breakfast. So I hope you'll try Soka. I hope you'll let me know how you like it. And thank you for spending this time with me on thinstronghealthy.com. I'm Cheryl Major, and I'll see you in my kitchen next time. Okay, we're back. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got some good encouragement to try that yourself. And you can get that recipe on my website, which is thinstronghealthy.com. If you look at the menu bar at the top of the website, you'll see a recipe section, and it's in that recipe section along with other really, really good, delicious, interesting, gluten-free, sugar-free, good, healthy, fat-inclusive recipes. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about the variety that you can use, the different things you can do with this particular recipe. We've used it as kind of an hors d'oeuvre pizza recipe, and we've taken it to parties and served it to people, and they've asked us, where can I get the recipe? How can I make this? And we took that basic gluten-free Soka that you saw come out of the oven, and we put guacamole on it. We put chopped red and yellow peppers for color and flavor, and then we sprinkled dried onion flakes over it. It was a big hit. You can also do a sweet version of it. You can sprinkle it with cinnamon and allspice. You can put apples and fresh berries on it and have kind of a dessert version. I've used it as a gluten-free crust for a pizza and put tomato sauce. I love anchovies. A lot of people don't, I know, but I love anchovies, so I put anchovies. I put, I got to remember what I put on because I make it different ways, different times. I put sauteed mushrooms and onions. I put fresh spinach on, a little pepperoncini because I like a little heat with it. So you can use your imagination and you can make it, you can eat it plain with a little nut butter. I use almond butter. In fact, that's what I had for breakfast this morning. I was late getting out of the house. I just put some almond butter between 2 slices of Soka and off I went. And it gives you a good start to your day. Now, talking about gluten-free pantry, what are you going to look to have in your gluten-free pantry for baking? Now, there's a list on my website. It's in thinstronghealthy.com. Again, if you look up in the menu section, you'll see a resources page, and the list will be in there. But let's talk a little bit about the different things that you can include in your gluten-free pantry. You can have almond flour. Now, almond flour is really good. I use that for dessert cooking a lot, and I've got a couple of really interesting, delicious chocolate chip cookie recipes on my website that are made with almond flour or part almond flour. Sometimes I'll mix them, and you'll use, I have a pumpkin chocolate chip cookie recipe that's made with half almond flour and half oat flour. So almond flour, steel cut oats, and with steel cut oats you have to make sure that it says gluten-free. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. So if you're like me and you're gluten intolerant, the steel cut oats, whether they have gluten or not, once in a while is not going to hurt you. If you have celiac, then you want to really be careful about that. Also, guar gum or xanthan gum you'll see. Now, I strongly advise people to use guar gum instead of xanthan gum. Those are used in place of gluten to make it, to affect the texture and make it a little lighter. And also it's used as kind of a thickener. But guar gum is legume-based, whereas xanthan gum is corn-based. Now, xanthan gum, you might think, begins with a Z, but it begins with an X. And that's how I remembered that I don't want to use xanthan gum. I want to use guar gum because it's easy to get these things confused, especially when you're in the learning stages. Once you get this stuff down and you incorporate it into your life, whether you go cold turkey or whether you do it over a period of time, It's just going to come naturally. You're not going to have to think about it so much. Okay, brown rice flour is another thing that you should have in your gluten-free pantry. Cocoa powder, I go for organic cocoa powder. Chia and flax seeds, those are really good, really healthy for you. Chickpea flour, which was in the soca, and that's made from garbanzo beans, quinoa flour, and coconut flour. So those are all good things, and again, you'll find that list on my website. Now, if you've decided to go gluten-free, you want to avoid the following: wheat, kamut, spelt, barley, rye, malts, and triticale. And you also want to avoid anything that contains the word dextrin. For example, maltodextrin contains gluten. Now, dextrins are used in processed food products. They are a sweetener. So look for that. You want to avoid them anyway, but here's another reason for you to look to avoid them. Where else will you find gluten? I'm sure that's a burning question. Well, whether it is or whether it isn't, I'm going to help you understand that it's everywhere, because you need to be aware of how many things that you expose yourself to, how many products you eat contain gluten, that you'd be amazed. You would think that it would be in bread, cakes, pies because it's in the crust, cookies, crackers. But you will also find gluten in shampoo. You'll find it in creams. You'll find it in soups and lunch meats, and you'll find it in condiments like barbecue sauce. And I was amazed when I first realized this, because why would you put gluten in shampoo? So again, if you have celiac, or if you have extreme sensitivity to gluten, it's really important for you to read the labels, not just on the food that you're eating, but also on the products that you put on your skin. Remember, your skin is your largest organ, so you need to be very careful what you expose yourself to in your environment. So there's a book, and I'm going to put this up so you can see this slide. It's called Grain Brain, and it's by Dr. David Perlmutter, and I have a link there, thinstronghealthy.com/Grain Brain, and that will take you right to a site where you can buy that book, because if you're interested in learning more about gluten and how it affects your brain, how it affects your overall health, it affects your gut health too, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But you need to get a book like this and read up on it so you understand. The more informed you are, the better, smarter a consumer you're going to be. And you have to advocate for your own health in our society. And this is a good way to do it. Learn more, get more educated about the things that you're exposing yourself to. Now, when you make any dietary change, I strongly urge people to journal. Get a food journal, track your changes, and how you feel. You'll think you'll remember when you started, how you felt, and what the stages were. You won't remember. I don't remember, and I'm pretty tuned into all of this, but life gets busy. So just get yourself a notebook, write down when you started going gluten-free, or how much gluten you eliminated and how you start to feel. It'll be really interesting for you to realize your energy level, your brain clarity, what's going on for you. It's a really good thing to track. Now, a few minutes ago when we were talking about Grain Brain, I mentioned a connection between grain and your gut. Now, gluten issues can really cause gut problems, and your gut is now thought to be, or called, your second brain, because they're finding out with research that your gut controls a lot of what goes on in your body. It does control a lot of stuff that goes on in your brain. It sends signals to your brain about, are you hungry? Are you full? It also helps control your mood. So it's really important to keep your gut in top shape. In my opinion, everyone should be taking prebiotics and probiotics. Now, I'll give you a little aside. I had been taking probiotics, and then last summer I ended up with a little intestinal bug, and it just got a hold of me, and I couldn't get myself straightened out, and I was really worried that I was headed toward being a person who had issues with IBS, or irritable bowel syndrome, because as my mother got older, she had to deal with that. So I got on the internet and did my research and read books and all of this, and what I discovered was that there's something called prebiotics. And prebiotics actually contain an insoluble fiber that feeds the probiotics and helps the probiotics do a better job. So I ordered prebiotics, I started taking them with my probiotics, and I will tell you that in a couple of days, I was fine. For me, it was a miracle, and I have shared this with my coaching clients. I have a number of them who have some IBS symptoms, and they report back to me that they have been helped immensely as well. I'm going to put up here the prebiotics and the probiotics that I take. These are links. And again, I never suggest anything to anybody, whether it's you out there listening or it's my coaching clients, unless I have tried it and vetted it myself. So these are the ones that I take every day, and I'm really happy with them. So just to wrap this up, I want to hear from you. You can email me at cheryl@thinstronghealthy.com. It's important to me to address during these programs the issues that are paramount for you, the questions, the struggles, the problems, the challenges that you have. That's why I'm doing this. I've had such a turnaround with my life by changing how I eat, and I know the power that food can have over your life, and I want to share that with you, but I'd really like to tailor it to what you need at this time. So please, I want to hear from you, and I want to know what you need help with. So visit thinstronghealthy.com for regular updates and information that's geared to your long-term health and well-being. And the resources and book sections are up there in the menu, as well as the recipe sections. I hope you'll check those out. I'm Cheryl Major with Thin Strong Healthy, and I want to thank you for spending this time with me. I'll see you next time.